Thank you so very much, everyone, for being here this evening. We are honored. For the first time in Philadelphia, we have the Baltic Triumvirate, the Honorable Ambassador, His Excellency Andris Razans, the Lithuanian Ambassador, Rolandas Krisciunas, and the Deputy Chief of Mission from the Estonian Embassy, Marki Tihhonova-Kreek. Please welcome them with a Philadelphia round of applause. I would also like to acknowledge, this is another Philadelphia first, the Baltics know how to collaborate and cooperate and work together, but so do Philadelphia organizations. This is a first. The Consular Corps Association of Philadelphia, the World Affairs Council, and the World Trade Center have all worked together tonight to bring this program to you. And I thank my colleagues at all the associations for being open to working together. This is the way things ought to happen, and we're thrilled that it has this evening. I'd like to, it is my pleasure to be able to welcome some of the dignitaries that are here. My colleague, the Honorary Consul of Latvia, John Medvekis. John, please raise your hand or stand up. There he is. The Baltics also work very closely with their Nordic neighbors, and we have the Honorary Consul of Norway, Eric Torp, here. Is he? Then, if I may, please indulge me a few more shout-outs, because this is really, it's wonderful how the countries work together. We have the President and Vice President of the Latvian American community here in Philadelphia, Leila Gansert and Adams Berzins. We have the Estonian American National Council, the Executive Director, Linda Rink, is here. The Estonian American Community Philadelphia, President Alvar Susar is here. And we are blessed as well that Father Peter Burkauskas has joined us from the Lithuanian St. Andrew's Church. Maria Otorashvili, did I say your name right? Oh, good, hooray. Who's a fellow of the Foreign Policy Research Institute, who's doing they're doing a major study on the Baltics now. We're very grateful that you're here and are doing that study. And we have another, the president of Arcadia University, the business school. She's due. She'll be here shortly. And we have, this is Philadelphia is a city of firsts, and we have a very new group that has been formed, the Penn Science Diplomacy Group. And we have their founder and chair, Enrique Lin Shao. Who's here? Where is Enrique? And Amanda Hay is here from the group, and they are undertaking, Amanda is the director of the Lithuanian project, and the whole Lithuanian team is here. So thank you very much for being here. It is, I'm very happy that the city of Philadelphia really does think globally and acts locally. And we have our Director of Commerce, Alan Greenberger, here on behalf of the city to welcome our esteemed guests and you all.
Good evening, everybody. You're missing a great sunset behind you, but I get to see it. Folks up here get to see it. Very nice. It's quite something. Well, welcome to all of you, especially from those of you who are not from Philadelphia, and to our esteemed guests, ambassadors, Deputy Chief of Mission. Thank you for being here. We're really delighted to have you back here in Philadelphia. I think I want to give a special shout out to this lady here. I was telling Krista a minute ago that we've known each other for, I think, about 30 years, when everybody's hair was a different color. But can we give her a round of applause? Several years ago, when I became deputy mayor, I expressed an interest in and acted on getting to know our consular corps better. Eric and John back here, thank you for being here today. It's a rather extraordinary group, a group that we frankly hadn't paid enough attention to. And part of the effort was they're here, this is important, or this needs to be important to the city of Philadelphia, and it is the base from which we have really grown our international relations and our international presence. People like Linda Conlin, World Trade Center, World Affairs Council, these are hugely important organizations for us because in this century, if you want to be a vibrant economy, if you want to expand your horizons, you have to think globally and you have to act, yes, locally, true, but you have to also act globally. You have to be there. One of the big mistakes, and I know I don't need to tell this crowd this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. One of the big mistakes that people make is to think that a place, institution, individual has sort of inherent assets and that they're so obvious that people will come to you and they'll want what you want. And there are probably a handful of places and people in the world for whom that's true. But for most of the world, it's not true. And there's a big world out there with some fabulous places. There are some fabulous cities in this world. And they all have a great story to tell. But if you sit home and expect people to come and partake in your story, you're going to have you're going to be sadly disappointed. You have to go. You have to go meet people. In the world we live in, which is so complex and so full of information to the point that, you know, none of us can cope anymore. At least I can't cope anymore with devices and emails, and I'm sure everybody here is in the same boat at some level or another. People kind of throw up their hands and say, well, that's nice, but who do we know? And more importantly, who do we trust? Trust is what makes the world go round. Trust is the basis of peace. Trust is the basis of business. And so if we want to do that with each other, we have to develop trust. And the only way you develop trust is to get to know each other. And the only way you get to know each other is to be there in person, break bread, have a drink, have a conversation. That's what this is about. That's why this is so important, not simply for all of you and for these wonderful people who are up here, but for the city of Philadelphia. I know the mayor would love to be here to greet you as well. He kind of had this little event a week and a half ago that kind of took up a lot of time, and I think he took a pretty well-deserved vacation. So he is out of town. In fact, I suspect he's out of the country at the moment, hopefully enjoying himself and sort of recharging his own batteries for the next phase of his life, and because of that, it'll be the next phase of my life as well. But I couldn't be happier to have you here. I regret that I do have a few more things to do tonight, and so as soon as I'm done, I'm going to leave you. But you have a rather, how to describe that topic? It's a fairly pregnant topic, a pretty important topic, and an opportunity. I mean, I think everybody here wants to see this as an opportunity to find a good story and a good set of outcomes for what inevitably we face in the world, which are problems. So one other thing that I want to tell you, because Krista was so great at giving me talking points. I have to repeat these because this was some of the best talking points I ever received. And yeah, you're smiling because you know what I'm going to say, don't you? You know, the Baltic countries are not huge countries, and we're sitting around in a fairly large country, and sometimes we don't pay enough attention to our small friends and neighbors around the world. So maybe we don't think about the Baltics perhaps as much as we ought to. So Krista reminded me of a couple of things that might make us think otherwise. Skype. Anybody here use Skype ever? Yeah, like everybody's used Skype. It was invented in Estonia. Anybody know that? I didn't know that. For those of you who know the opera, the Metropolitan Opera in New York, the largest contingent, nationality contingent of opera singers at the Metropolitan are Latvian. I didn't know that. And I suspect everybody's heard of IKEA. We all know it's a Swedish company, but we also probably know that an awful lot of IKEA furniture is not made in Sweden. Well, where is one of the biggest places that it's made? Lithuania. So we live with the results of the creative and craft of the Baltic countries every day. And for me personally, as an architect, certainly two of the greatest influences in my life were Luke Kahn, a Philadelphian by way of Estonia, and probably many of you have heard of him. Probably the guy you probably have not heard of, because he was a professor when I was at Rensselaer, was a fellow named Ilmar Reinwald, also from Estonia. So it's a little reminder that the world is an interesting place. There's talent everywhere, small countries, large countries, and in this particular case, from the Baltic countries are friends in and sort of fellow travelers in democracy. So welcome to all of you, ambassadors, deputy chief of mission. By the way, we want to have a little conversation about an honorary consul in Estonia. We'll have that in another moment. But welcome to all of you. Thank you to the World Affairs Council, the World Trade Center, and to the Consular Corps of Philadelphia for putting this program together. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Alan. You can see why he's always a welcome speaker at many events. And he's been a great proponent of a global Philadelphia, which we appreciate. Good evening. I am Linda Conlin, president of the World Trade Center of Greater Philadelphia, and I'm sorry that sunset is just gorgeous, but I'm so happy we have that for our distinguished guests. So I want to add my warm welcome to all of you here today, and especially to our distinguished guests from Washington. Having served not too long ago in Washington myself at the Departments of State and Commerce, as well as at the Export-Import Bank, I appreciate the important work that all of you do in representing your countries and in strengthening the bilateral relationship between the United States and your countries. This is actually the fourth program in our embassy series, and it's very much in keeping with our mission at the World Trade Center of Greater Philadelphia, and that is to provide companies with the information, the guidance, and the international connections they need to accelerate their global business growth. And we do that in part by networking with other World Trade Centers around the world. And I'm very pleased to say that there is a World Trade Center in Tallinn, in Estonia. And hopefully there will be a World Trade Center in Riga as well as Vilnius one day. I want to in particular express my appreciation this evening to Honorary Consul Krista, President of the Consular Corps Association of Greater Philadelphia. She's done really an outstanding job, and I was just saying to you, Mr. Ambassador, that you have such a tremendous representative here in Philadelphia and in the region, and to Honorary Consul John Medvekas to also thank you so much for what you've done in helping to organize and promote this evening, and to Craig Snyder, the President and CEO of the World Affairs Council. Thank you for your help and the help of your able team. Denise Balla has done an outstanding job. She was a joy to work with. I know I'm speaking on behalf of our own staff. And speaking of my staff, I want to thank Graziella Denuzzo, who organized this evening, worked closely with Denise, Susan Farrington, and Delaney Newhart, and our COO, Dino Ramus. And now to our distinguished speakers. And let me begin with Craig. Now, most of you know him as president and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. And you came here, Craig, in 2012, I believe, after a very successful career in government and as the founder and CEO of a Washington, D.C. based lobbying group. And now, as CEO of the World Affairs Council, he is overseeing the region's premier educational organization dedicated to fostering public understanding of national and international policy issues. In fact, you may not know this, he actually began his career at the Council some 25 years ago when he was very young, but he left it to spend nearly 20 years in politics as a candidate for the United States Congress and as chief of staff to Senator Arlen Specter, a lobbyist, and also he served as a political consultant. So you can see that Craig's legislative and foreign affairs background really suits him well for his current position. So thank you very much, Craig. His Excellency Rolandas Krisciunas is the ambassador of Lithuania to the United States. He became the ambassador of Lithuania on September 17, 2015, having previously served as Lithuania's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs since 2012. And you do have copies of all of the bios at your table, but I would like to share some important things about each one of our distinguished guests. He also served at the Ministry of Finance, and this is what I always like to see. He served in Washington earlier, 1998 to 2001, and I'm sure our paths may have crossed at that time in Washington as first secretary at the Lithuanian embassy. And what a great deal of pride it must be to then come back to serve as ambassador. So I salute you. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Ambassador Krisciunas has served in various other positions within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he did receive his master's degree in economic sciences from Ohio University in the United States. So certainly some strong ties to our country. Ambassador Andris, His Excellency Andris Razans is Ambassador of the Republic of Latvia to the United States. And he also serves as Ambassador of Latvia to Mexico as well. And he became ambassador in 2012, posted to the United States. 2013, posted to, or at least representing Latvia in Mexico as well. Although I do believe you spent a considerable time, amount of your time right here in Washington, D.C. He has also held various posts at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as Ambassador at Large of the Ministry's Policy Planning Group. He also served in other ambassadorial positions, as Ambassador of Denmark, Ambassador of Morocco, I believe, as Deputy Head of the mission of the Latvian Embassy mission in Sweden as well. So welcome, Ambassador Razans. We're very pleased to have you here. And we also have the Deputy Chief of Mission from the Embassy of Estonia, Marki, Tihhonova-Kreek. Hope I pronounced that correctly. That's 4 years of Russian, so hopefully. Likewise, she has extensive experience within the Foreign Ministry. She currently serves, actually since August of 2015, as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Estonia in Washington. She served as counselor to the Foreign Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Chief of Protocol, also served with her law background as counselor to the Secretary General and part of the Estonian permanent representation to the EU as well. Welcome. So now, without further ado, I will hand over the podium to Craig Snyder.
We only have
two microphones. So I apologize for the fact that we'll be passing these among us. I'd like to ask if each of you would like to make some opening remarks, a few minutes to kind of set the stage. Then we'll have a bit of discussion amongst us, and then we'll open to finally for questions from the audience. Mr. Ambassador, if you'd like to get us started.
It should be on.
It should be on, yes. Let me start by thanking for invitation. It's a real big pleasure for me to be there and looking at this big crowd of Philadelphians eager to listen to the Baltic states and to which we are very eager to share our stories there. Myself, as it was introduced, I was some 15 years ago in the US. And could you believe it is the first time I'm coming to Philadelphia after 15 years. So I'm really amazed what you have done with this skyline and the city. So clearly from here it seems like it's the center of the world. And it just multiplies the pleasure to be there. And I'm certain it's the first time we are three of us here, but I hope it's not the last time we are visiting Philadelphia and discussing and looking for the new ways for us to cooperate on. On Lithuania, I would like to say some introductory words. We were listening to what each country is famous for, Skype, IKEA, so there are much plenty of those. If you would see in different indicators produced by different organizations, be it economic freedom, be it doing business top 50 or 30 in the world, you will not be surprised to see each of the Baltic states very close to the top. So that's where we are, that's where we're trying to accomplish. Reforms were the main thing which have been driving us forward. And of course, we are the countries which were unfortunately suppressed for quite substantial time and occupied by Soviet Union after World War II. And that makes us to appreciate democracy even more and the freedom which we are sticking all this time. In Washington, D.C., I'm pleased to reside in the most historical building Lithuania owns. Because this embassy was opened all through the period of occupation, and it was a very strong message to the world that we hope to be back, we hope to be free, and this hope was flying high all this time. And I'd like to thank the United States that it never recognized occupation of the Baltic states. It made it possible for us to have this building, and that's the embassy we owned before World War II. That's the embassy we owned all this time since buying it at the beginning of the 20th century. And that's very symbolic, and that's why I'm pleased to reside and to do our business on the daily basis. Also, what I would like to stress that in our situation, I think it's very important to say that the Baltics not just talk. We are not just people of words, we are people of action. And there are now a number of things which we could proudly show the world. One of those I would mention this year, 25 years of independence for Lithuania. We also are getting real energy independence from our neighbor in the east, which makes it very important, because when you are able to have a choice, you always have freedom. And that kind of choice we have created for ourselves by our own means and our big will and big hearts. We always say that in Lithuania, we never were taking things by numbers, by numbers of people. What we were taking the world by is by small numbers, but big hearts and big minds. And the small, we appreciate small things, and we could see it in Vilnius, walking through the streets of Vilnius, and we see how small is beautiful and enshrined in every single corner of Vilnius. And of course, not being just people of words, but action. This year, as I said, it's a year of energy freedom for Lithuania. We have built LNG terminal, which is enabling us to buy gas from the world market. And I hope that US LNG will be coming to the Baltics after this year ends, because you will have an ability to export LNG wherever. So I hope that this will be landing also at the shores of the Baltic Sea in Lithuania. The other projects we are implementing by the end of this year, it's connecting Lithuania and the Baltic states to the Western European markets in electricity, building one electricity transmission line to Poland, and one is under the Baltic Sea to Sweden. So it will get us even stronger connected to the rest of Europe. And I am looking forward to the discussion. I think there is plenty to learn. And as I said, it's not just about indexes. In Lithuania, I could tell that, for example, lots of people are surprised that, for example, we are teaming up together with the US to build the most powerful laser in the world, which is happening in Europe, close to Prague. And in some laser, in the sector of lasers, in some kinds of laser, we are having half or 80% of world market. So it's not just about IKEA, it's not just about agriculture. This is still very important. We are very proud that we are producing a lot of ecological agricultural products, exporting it worldwide, and I hope to do it also. We will be doing it more in the US, but it's very wide variety of our economies, being small but quite smart ones, able to get in different sectors and be very competitive.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's really such a pleasure to be back in Philadelphia after some time, although this time was not a very long one, just a few months, but it's always really very gratifying to come here. There's something special in Philadelphia. I haven't felt that either in Washington or New York or somewhere else in the United States, but here I feel really there's something that really warms up my mind and heart, and thanks so much for very warm welcoming of all of us tonight. Well, coming from the north of Europe, one of 3 Baltic states, I think we have really currently enjoying a fascinating agenda in our relations with the United States. I think there's no big and small countries when it comes to cooperation. The only thing what matters whether we use opportunities we have or not. If we use them, then it's fine. If we don't, then it's not that fine. And that's exactly what's happening in our relations with the US. I joined our diplomatic service back in 1992, and that was fall of 92. Latvia just had regained our independence, and more or less we had clarity where we are moving. I think we had no promise from our partners in the West that at some point we might be joining or reintegrating us with the Western community, with the values of Western community. But for us, for people in Latvia in 92, especially young ones, we really didn't care about something what we missed that time. One thing that was clear: we regained our independence and we were about to build our country again. And then in the 90s we had really very fascinating period of time when we went through the very important process of transition. Nothing was present in Latvia when we regained independence except goodwill of people and support from our friends and relatives outside Latvia. And nothing came free of charge. I think we have been building our country based on assumption that we want to go back to the place we once belonged, or Latvia once belonged, to Europe. When we looked to Europe, we saw European Union as the most important organization that would really provide us a fantastic instrument to adjust, to speed up our reforms, to get through a very difficult period of transformation. And we opted for this option. We introduced our currency. We introduced all the missing legislation, what was relevant for creation of free and open market. We created a financial sector that integrated with the rest of the world, and we privatized our properties, restitution of properties as well followed. So it was very fascinating time, and it took about 14 years for Latvia to really mark a success story we were able to join EU, and then as well the same year we joined the NATO. What does it tell to us? It tells that what we did, or what Baltic states did together, what Poland did, other countries in Central Europe that today are part of the transatlantic family, what we did was something that is possible for any European country, provided that reforms are done fast, provided that we have enough support. It's doable. And the only way how, for instance, I view Ukraine can succeed today, or Moldova, or the answer is very simple: go Baltic way. We did our reforms. We went through a very difficult period. These reforms were neither popular among the population nor easy or cheap. But at the end, I think we more or less succeeded. I'm not telling that everything is perfect, not at all, but from captive nation in 91, still, when we regained our independence, to presidency of European Union this year, being in charge of more than 90% of all the EU business, it's quite an accomplishment, and it's doable. And it's a very good example for all these of the countries that in kind of a little bit shady zone right now, that it's possible. It's possible to do this transformation. I think that's a lesson what I would like to stress, especially having this very important topic today for the discussion. The Baltic question: is the region secure in its post-Soviet success? I believe we're pretty secure, and in spite of the fact that the storms are gathering. Thank you.
I can only agree with my Baltic colleagues that it's such an honor to be here today in front of such a distinguished audience. So I'm very proud and happy to be here. It's my first time in Philadelphia, so it makes me even more happy and proud to spend this time here today with you. I come from a country that invented Skype, so it was quite correct. In addition to that, some of you have visited Estonia. We have a lot of forest there, and if you go to the deepest forest in Estonia, you still have Wi-Fi there. So this is something that my country is known for. My government works paperless, so I try to do the same. Here we have e-government. We don't use any paper inside the government, and we are generally known for being very e-friendly, and we try to get rid of bureaucracy as far as it's possible. Well, one good example was that is that when I had a child a couple of years ago. My daughter was born in the hospital. Then just a couple of hours later, I took my iPad. I was still in the hospital together with her. Then I just filled in some forms and registered her, got the birth certificate that was sent home to me afterwards. So I saved so much time that I could actually use to be together with my family. And this is also, this principle is spread to other areas. Our businesses benefit a lot because of these services, and this is something, e-governance, the concept that we are also taking to the world. So our experts travel around the world, and we try to share this know-how that we have also with the world. Another area that we are also very good at and known for, and we try to share this knowledge with our good allies and other countries, is cybersecurity. And this is an example that, an area what we have developed because we had really no chance. We had to do it because we were having a really large or extensive cyber attack back in 2007. Our government server or system was attacked by a country that we shared a border with. Yes, so the real life really drove us to develop this area, and now we are at the stage where our private sector and government work hand in hand, share information. We are doing many exercises, and also we are taking this know-how to the world, even to some Latin American countries, to Caribbean, to everywhere in the world. This is just an introduction of my country. And while about myself, I remember when I came to DC 2 months ago. This have been very, very busy and intensive 2 months. I was amazed and then positively surprised how seriously and really well Estonia and also other Baltic countries are taken here as real partners. I mean, it hasn't always been like this. I know that several years ago we were considered Russophobes, or we had this idea that there's a country who could possibly attack or be aggressive towards other countries in our region. We were not taken very seriously, but now all of a sudden this has changed, and it's the welcome here by US has been very, very warm, and we are taken as real partners, that us who are sitting around the table and who are discussed things with, and this applies also to all the Baltic countries together. So we are heard of, we are taken seriously, and this is something that we, as small countries, have to really take benefit from. So I'm proud to be here in the US. I'm proud to represent here my little country, and I'm also very proud to be here today in this evening to discuss things with you.
So I want to start. All of you have stressed the positive and the dynamism of your countries, young countries in the sense of their current form, and the achievements that have been made since independence. I want to stick with that for a minute, and then we may turn a little darker, but to talk about some of the gathering storm, as the ambassador said. On the positive side, we have people here who work in the export sector, whether with respect to manufacture or to services. What would you tell each of you? What would you tell Philadelphia area businesses who might want to become involved economically in the Baltics? What are the sectors that you think are most relevant, and what steps would they take to be able to engage in trade with your countries? If we could just go down the line real quick.
Yes, if I may start with, sometimes size doesn't matter. And we, in Estonia, we have developed so to say, our niches. So the certain areas that we know that we are good at, and that we know that we can also do business with other countries. And I'm repeating myself now, but considering that cybersecurity is the area that we invest a lot, this area is also it also extends to business relations. I'm not I don't have a technical education myself, unfortunately. Sometimes I wish I had. I'm a lawyer, much more boring. But the sector, the different companies that provide different solutions for our IT sector and also technical solutions and to our IT sector. These companies, this area or this sector is specifically welcomed to Estonia, but also all the others. I mean, I cannot say that only one sector is welcomed, but this is some area where we already have a lot of business with US, and it's a great example that really size doesn't matter. Big countries, small countries. If we do something together, we can be very, very strong. So I encourage all of you to do business with Estonia. We have a separate business or economic counselor in our embassy, because we consider business relations very, very important. We are not that many people in the embassy. We are altogether 12, but we have separate economic counselor, and you're always very, very welcome to direct all your questions, your concerns, your thoughts directly to us, and we would help you to get to reach the right people in Estonia.
I should say that if it's about what are the business advantages to engage with Latvia, first I'd like to say that it's a bit conceptually wrong to see only small Latvian market or see Latvia and think only about small Latvian market. In the real world, there are no boundaries, there are no borders in between anymore. Latvia, our neighbors, we are part of huge EU market. The very same legislation, the very same rules is accessible region. If you are based, let's say in Latvia, you can do many things anywhere basically in Europe or outside, paying less for actually cutting costs and having other good advantages. So the size is a little bit misleading here. There are many companies that operate from Latvia, not only in our small market, but as well across our borders in Nordic countries, Poland, Germany, Russia including. That's one thing. The second, what I would like to stress is that since a very long time ago, Latvia has very important traditions in engineering. And advantages what we have since then, since very long, all these traditions really are. Our education, especially in robotics and drones these days, is something that really attracts attention anywhere. And well, it's students that graduate, for instance, Latvian Technical University, and especially that those who have studied robotics, they compete as equals with anybody from Stanford or any Japanese university, because we have these traditions that goes back to not only 18th century, but these traditions have been supported by the very fact that during the Soviet occupation, for instance, Riga was considered as one of the places Soviets invested huge amounts of money for developing different kind of military equipment, airplanes, satellites, etc. And we still have these traditions, and today upgraded by availability of information and exchange of students and cooperation among the universities. That's the second thing. In the Baltics, it's almost 100% or really 100% internet penetration everywhere. We stand among the top 5 fastest internet countries in the world. It's easy, and internet is nothing new. We started from very far behind. In '91, we introduced the best what was available on the market since then, and that's something what is available. We have still good education system. We have good, well-educated people that have studied not only in Latvia but as well in other universities in Europe or United States. Sometimes my country is known for 26% of presence of ethnic Russians. It's true, but these ethnic Russians, quite many of them are involved in business relationships with Russian companies that provide as well unique opportunity for those American companies that perhaps might be a little bit afraid to do business directly with Russia these days, but keeping the business on your territory close to Russian border, that's an opportunity. What I can really recommend: ports, railways, railway directions to CIS, Central Asia. Those are available for you. Maybe somebody of you know that in 2009, when in Afghanistan, the supply chain for American troops through Pakistan was cut, and no cargoes were going through Pakistan, non-lethal cargoes. The idea of Northern Distribution Network was developed, and the idea was to begin this route, new transition route in the Baltics, in Port of Riga, put the cargoes for American soldiers in containers or on train in Riga, and then sent directly by Russia, Central Asia to Afghanistan. It began, and then that additional routes were developed through Lithuania and Estonia, and suddenly for approximately 1 year, Baltic ports was almost the only real feasible transit route for American boys in Afghanistan, providing non-lethal cargoes. Not a single container was lost during that year. And that's really unique and a very important relationship. Transit, that's another story.
Thank you. And I haven't been to the deepest forest of Estonia, to be honest, very clear. But the statistics also show that the fastest public, and I hope in forest there is a public Wi-Fi, is the fastest in Lithuania. Also, what I wanted to point out when we're speaking about the investments, of course, we are #1 in the EU. If to take engineering, mathematics, and science graduates per capita in Lithuania. So if you are looking for engineering solutions, you will be in the right place to search for those in Lithuania. And we are doing lots of different things in engineering. So you could go to the smallest mass production, and I haven't seen much of Volvo buses in the US. I saw Volvo cars, but in Europe you will be finding plenty of Volvo buses. So all the wiring systems of the Volvo buses, of any bus you will take, I was told by a Swedish investor, they are produced in Lithuania. So any single Volvo bus will have a wiring system produced in Lithuania. Also, but it's about small and mass production. We're also catering to US and anywhere. There's a very sophisticated solutions in engineering. So it's like there is a company, actually of Estonian capital, we bought a Lithuanian company, which is producing robotics or any solution. You come with a problem, and you will get a one-time solution. There you will be elaborating on that. So from mass production to very individual solution to whatever needs you have. I on purpose mentioned that we are a very small economy but very diverse in agriculture. One of the last investments from US coming to Lithuania was a Kinsey tractor producer, who's of course producing tractors not for Lithuania, producing tractors for Belarus and all markets around us in there. 2 days ago at the embassy we were issuing visas to another investor in Lithuania, it's Intermedics, which is a healthcare technology company in Lithuania. I met them when I was vice minister in Vilnius, and their CEO was about to make a decision to make a first investment ever outside the US, and they chose Lithuania to do it. And we said, what we talked, I said, I don't want you to make a mistake, because I want you to be a success story. Success story will breed a success. There will be others to come. And so, in Lithuania we say, measure 7 times, on 8's just cut. Because once cut, it will not be the same thing. So they were very cautious. For them it was very strategic. They said they started from 30 people. They employed 30 people in Conlin, the second largest city in Lithuania. Today they are planned 2 years after. 2 years after, they are about to employ 700. So it's 25 times more. That kind of success they are looking for. So they was very pleased to what they found in Lithuania, to carry on with this. Another investor is Thermo Fisher Scientific, which also our investors, we have a business, American Lithuanian Business Council established in DC, and they said if all the facilities, like the one in Vilnius, would be working at the productivity level as the one in Vilnius, their volumes of production will be 3 times as much, in everyone involved. So they are increasing their facilities quite tremendously, and also searching for ability to also for introducing certain services, also introduced for so-called service centers, which are very, very proud. It's a booming market in Lithuania. We were voted last year the #1 in Central and Eastern Europe as a service centers. So you could find companies like Western Union, which are already there, employing thousands of Lithuanians. Barclays, it's not an American company, but also like the first icebreaker, basically. They also started from 100, today it's already almost 2,000, and they're employing more and so on. So they're really very happy about the people, quality of people they have found there, and I think it's key for an investment. You need an educated workforce which is able, to give you a value added you will not be able to find anywhere else. And Thermo Fisher Scientific, it's a biotechnology company. And in Lithuania we have the biannual conference on biotechnologies, is Life Sciences Baltic. So I would invite anyone who is interested in this sector to visit this excellent event. I'd say the next one is planned in September in 2016, where the very purpose of it to bring scientists, businesses, and students together. So just universities to select certain topics and to discuss together to see how certain ideas could be commercialized and so on. So to finish, it's very broad spectrum of what you could look at. I mentioned lasers, we are very unique, and we are already working with Americans. Thank you.
We have a great deal more that we could talk about and that it would be important and productive to talk about than we have time, unfortunately. So I want to go kind of to the heart of our pointed question. There is a perception, I think, that's shared on both sides of the Atlantic that there is a growing potential for a Russian threat against the Baltics of some kind. I want to ask how each of you and your governments feel about the security guarantee of NATO. Is it really truly believed by your governments and indeed by the people of your countries that in the event of a horrible event, that young men and women from Iowa and Kansas and England and Germany, etc., would come to the defense of your countries?
Let me start also by one positive side of it, if there could be positive side of it. But one of the positive sides on economic field, for example, in Lithuania just a year ago, basically 2 years ago, this cluster of gaming industry was non-existent. There were no basically companies which were producing games, computer games, which is a big market, billions over there. Since all this crisis have started, Russian, Belarusian, Ukrainian from these companies started to look at Vilnius as a spot for them to do their business. So we got quite an influx of companies which came to Lithuania to do whatever, because they were afraid to lose Western European and American markets. So that's all of a sudden brought a gaming industry in Lithuania. But that's the only single, I would say, positive of all the situation what we have. But overall, of course, we are 100% certain that the NATO obligations written in Article 5 will be complied with, so we have no smallest doubt. What we are discussing is just for someone not to make a mistake, to think that they could challenge it. And that's the biggest thing, you know. And how to do it, to prevent anyone to make a mistake, just to try to test this Article 5, is actually to bring NATO forces in the Baltics. And there were their example to the United States, which was the first to show an example. And believe me when I say, US troops are not to fight in Baltics. US troops are there to prevent anyone making a mistake. So to make war or any incident never happen. And when we hear argument, you know, but that could provoke Putin, what provokes Putin is softness. What provokes Putin is doing nothing. What provokes Putin is that thinking that he could do something and could be not punished for it. You know, that's why it's important there should be NATO forces in the Baltics, because the Berlin Wall have collapsed a number of years, if you not noticed, a number of years ago. But if you look at the map where these troops are still stationed, it seems like, you know, Berlin Wall is still somewhere there. So let's just make a simple change. Just bring it to the Baltics. It's just a frontier states where we are. So, and that will make it very clear. NATO is here, and US is a part of NATO, and that's messing with the NATO. And nobody, if they will feel that there is not just talks, but there are troops and ability to counter anything, nothing will happen. And why we need to do it? As I said, it's a very small possibility in my mind that it could happen. But of course, the consequences of this very small, however small possibilities, such a dramatic ones, that's why we need to take a precaution. And that's a precaution, what we are asking to do. And so far, as I said, the line that we have an ear of our partner, United States, which never recognized the occupation of Lithuania and the other Baltic states. And we have a strong feeling of the presence, and we have no doubt that their commitments, our partner commitments, will be followed through.
I think that the NATO guarantees for Baltic security really are very, very, very strong, and there's no reason to doubt that. Although we have seen lots of discussions, articles, comments, part of them has been working in the very same line, coming with the Russian propaganda machine, arguing that, well, we have failed a test of democratic development, we are weak, we are vulnerable, it's difficult to defend. Can you show me a single European country that can withstand pressure, that if something happens, I really believe that there is no country in Europe that can protect itself without NATO support. And there's no real reason to speak about whether Baltic countries can be defended or not. I think militarily, yes. And if you speak to military people, yes, they say, well, it's difficult, it's that and that and that, but it's doable, provided that there is strong political will to do that in NATO countries. Until now, based on the reaction of NATO towards the threats that we have seen coming from Russia in our neighborhood, the reaction has been really very timely, appropriate and strong. Of course, one can say whether 150 American soldiers plus 400 German soldiers plus maybe 10 Luxembourg soldiers and Latvian army would suffice to withstand the blunt incursion. I think, well, it's not about numbers. I think it's about principle. And those guys in Kremlin who are calculating and trying to understand what their next move might be, I think there are enough rational people to understand that if there are additional NATO troops, besides Latvian troops on Latvian soil, if you add Americans, if you add Germans, if you add Portuguese, etc. It's a serious stuff. You don't have NATO troops in Ukraine. You don't have NATO troops in Moldova. So it's a bit different story here. And I think these arguments really are very much heard in Moscow, although we are facing as well very strong wave of Russian propaganda these days. The second thing is that besides what can our allies do for us, it's extremely important for us, for ourselves, to take seriously responsibility. During previous time, before the Russian aggression in Ukraine, NATO's focus mostly was on out-of-area operations. Either it was in Afghanistan or somewhere else. Latvian troops were participating as NATO ally in all of these operations, and as well sacrificing their lives. There had been cases, our boys have been saving American boys in Afghanistan, etc. So these are the things. It's kind of pledge what we have taken seriously. Now perhaps when the tide has changed and there are unpredictabilities on the Russian side these days, it's very natural to expect that that NATO allies take the pledge very seriously. And from very political statements as well of American leaders, including in visits in the region, there's no any indication that it might be different. Of course, there might be as well internal politics involved in each and every country, arguing about whether somebody does enough or not. That's another story. But based on the true facts, what I have seen in my country, based on our discussions with our military people, I think they feel pretty good. The government has increased dramatically defense spending and will be reaching these 2% famous very soon. That's as well an effect of Ukrainian war. So it's a safe place by any standard. We can really deal easily with little green man problem or things what you have seen anywhere. I think we'll take them out simply. We will not wait. But provided that they are not supplied from outside, but if they are supplied, it's violation of Article 5 of NATO. And then it's about NATO. And if NATO doesn't stand to the task, there will be no any more NATO. Easy like that.
Thank you. My country, Estonia, has spent 2% on defense already for several years. So we do take defense very, very seriously. We do our homework, and this is a top priority for us, considering the geographical location where we are located. Now, yes, we are the member of NATO, and I personally have a complete trust in NATO, and so is my whole country. If we see the percentage which supports the NATO, it is very, very, very high. It has been very high, and it is also high among the ethnic Russians living in Estonia, even after the Ukraine crisis started. So yes, we believe in NATO, and we believe in it also in this sort of new normal or new circumstances. So if we are talking about NATO, yes, you are quite right. Our whole discussion here today is about that the situation has changed. We have new normal, and within NATO, good allies discuss things and adapt to new situation. And this is something that we are also expecting from NATO to adapt the new situation, but not to stop there where we are at the moment. If I'm talking about it, I think the things that we need to do all together within NATO with our allies could be summed up with three P's, three words, three P's. Sort of, first of them is presence. We need a considerable presence, a significant presence of NATO troops or boots on the ground in our region in order that Russia would take us seriously. So this is first thing. The second thing would be pre-positioning of heavy military weapons. I mean, if you imagine the conflict situation, basically it would be very difficult perhaps it would be doable to bring more troops in, but it would be more difficult to bring heavy weapons. So we need pre-positioning of weapons in our region. This is something we are working together with our NATO allies. And the third thing is definitely planning. So we need to do more exercises. We need to have strategic long-term plans instead of hectic ad hoc moving troops from one part of alliance to another. So we need to plan in order to adapt to the new situation. And this is something that we from our side are taking very seriously in Estonia. We as I told you, spend 2% or more on defense. And this is something we are expecting also from our good allies within NATO. US definitely being one of them. Very, very, very good ally. Things that US says and does. This is key that really matters, we believe. To conclude my remarks now, I would also like to point out one word which is very, very important within EU and also within NATO at the moment, and this word is solidarity. We use this word while we are talking about migration crisis. We show our solidarity towards the countries which are under pressure regarding migration crisis. And for us, for Estonia, and also personally, I have thought about this word like this, that this is a nice word, but it cannot be an empty thought. You know, solidarity cannot be an empty thought. We need to give a substance to it. And this is something we are dealing with in EU now, and also Estonia has shown its solidarity towards the countries who are under pressure because of this crisis. The same word also applies when we are talking about security policy. So this is what we expect also from our NATO allies, solidarity. So if I would need to point out one word to describe our good relations with our allies at the moment, then I would point out this word, solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to apologize for our time constraints. We'll take 2 questions from the audience. I see a lot more. Okay. John, we'll start with you.
Thank you. What has transpired, I think, with Putin's initiatives, and I would just very quickly would like to go back to address this in economic terms. The Baltic countries were the sort of the economic tigers prior to 2007. Then we went through the recession. Then the Baltic countries, in a very admirable way, addressed those problems. And I can certainly speak for Latvia. It's just such draconian However, as the economies began to grow in the last couple of years, if I'm correct, the Baltics have been really, well, few of the economies in Europe have grown. Now that was followed by the initiative, Putin's adventures, which Crimea, Ukraine, and then the Baltics sort of, at least to the markets at risk. The risk premium for the region went up in terms of the investors. I'm sort of curious, has there really been an economic impact, especially at this inflection point when the economy is returning, wanting to have outside capital, needing outside capital, needing investment and growth is important throughout Europe. Has that really affected this uncertainty that's been created? I wonder if there's been any sort of diminishing investment or any observations that you would make about this risk premium.
You have the microphone.
Okay. Regarding Latvia, yes, we went through a very difficult period of crisis, 2009, 2011. But it took some time really to clean up the financial mess in Latvia. Since then, we have not only managed to rebalance our budget from 12% budgeted deficit yearly to basically 1% this year. We joined Eurozone, Euro currency introduced 2014, if I remember correctly, beginning. What that meant, when we joined Eurozone, Latvia was the only Eurozone country that complied with all the criteria required by membership in Eurozone. There was enough discipline in Eurozone. We did that. Of course, we had to comply with everything because we were newcomers. I think that made us much stronger strategically by joining Euro, even if Euro is a difficulty these days and there's a mess in Greece, etc. But we haven't felt any serious impact on our economy, neither because of problems in Greece, nor because of the calamities and problems in Russia or EU-Russia